Hello there, this is Bruno from Spainguru.es, and this is the Spanish Non Lucrative Visa webinar. Today is Thursday, December 11th, 2025. I'm going to go through a presentation. You can ask your questions in the chat box in the bottom right corner of your screen. Make sure to add a question mark at the end so it's easy for me to publish your questions so everyone can read it. Okay? You can ask at any time and I will address it immediately. The way the webinar is structured is before the application, during the application, and after the approval. We're going to go through some common definitions, talk about consulates, third-party services that process this type of visa for Spanish consulates, immigration status, entering Spain as a tourist, becoming a resident, some tax considerations, some common questions. Then we're going to go through the eligibility for the non-lucrative visa, requirements and documentation. And then we're going to look at the timing, application process. We're going to have some visual slides. And after the approval, how you arrive to Spain, when you have to renew the process, minimum stay requirements, going for long-term residency, Spanish citizenship, and some common pathways to transition to work permits. The content of this webinar is for information purposes only and is not legal advice. The requirements listed here are not official. Please check your specific consulate's requirements and BLS office's requirements. But before, a little bit about Spainguru.es. Our objective is facilitating the relocation process for English-speaking foreigners to Spain since 2014. We have some wonderful reviews online. Actually, we are at 193 5-star reviews on Trustpilot and 70-something in Google. So you are in very good hands. And you can use Spainguru.es for free. I never charge anyone using Spainguru. And everything, all the information you can find here is free. Okay. First of all, you have your step-by-step move to Spain checklist. Right? It's very easy. You just go here and you can start seeing what you have to do in order to move to Spain, generally 12 months before arriving, right? And then 6 months, 3 months, and after you arrive in Spain. And these are, of course, suggestions. It will also depend on your specific circumstances. But here, every single step can remind you or inspire you and watch videos and information and related services that you can use for preparing your move to Spain. Another useful thing, of course, is the webinars, free webinars. You are now the Spanish Non Lucrative Visa webinar, but of course you also have Moving to Spain Q&A with Ainhoa Manero, expert immigration lawyer, Spanish taxes, Digital Nomad Visa, and other partners webinars, and all of them are free. And of course you get recordings for all of them. And then also, of course, I have the weekly newsletter that 15,000 readers read every single Monday morning, where I feature top discussions on social media, most watched video of the week, news, and so much more. Huge community of Facebook groups with a total aggregated number of members of 150,000 members. And here, of course, the Non Lucrative Visa Facebook group. It's one of the most active, probably the biggest group with dedicated group for this type of visa with almost 26,000 members. And it's really, really huge, really active, and very, very useful because you get fresh information from people who are applying at your specific consulate, who give you first-hand experiences about their applications. And talking about first-hand experiences, if you go to Visa Guides, here, Spanish Non Lucrative Visa, yes, you get your Visa Guides with the recordings of these webinars, and you go to NLV consulates, and for example, you go to US consulates, you can check your specific consulates here. Yes, for example, let's look at Chicago. Yes, you have here all the you have the links for the official requirements from the consulate. If they work with BLS, you can find it in there. And also you have here first-hand experiences. Okay, first-hand experiences that are all listed here related to that specific consulate. As I said, that's really, really helpful. And of course, you can read the latest articles right here. Yes, and this is the last one. For example, today I published 3 first-hand experiences in San Francisco, in New York, and in Chicago. Yes, where you can read everything with all the links related to other articles, etc., etc. So really, really useful, in my humble opinion, if you're applying from a specific consulate. And as I said, Spainguru is for free, but of course, I vet professional partners for everything that you may need to move to Spain. Services, you have immigration lawyers, all of them know about the non-lucrative visa and applying for Spanish consulates from the US, UK, Canada, Australia, you name it. Sworn translators, apostille services in the US and the UK, health insurance, compliant health insurance for non-lucrative visa, tax advice, tax advisors, tax accountants, financial planners for structuring your move to Spain, and more expert consultations, more resources like shipping, parcel shipping, international moving quotes if you're moving with pets, pet cargos, and so much more. So definitely worth checking out what there is there, all personally vetted by me over the years, stellar reviews for all my partners, so you're in very good hands. And of course, those are professional services, and you will pay for those services to my partners. And of course, I get a kickback if you hire any of those services. So that's how it works, and that's how you can use Spainguru.yes. And let's move on now to the presentation. Let's start with, before the application, what is the Spanish Non Lucrative Visa? It's a Spanish visa for non-EU citizens who can financially support themselves, who don't need to work in Spain. It is defined by 2 laws, the main top higher hierarchy, Ley Orgánica 4/2000, and the regulation of the law, also known as the Reglamento de Extranjería. This Reglamento de Extranjería recently changed into a new one, was updated, and took effect on May 20th, 2025. So it's quite new. Now, this type of visa can only be applied from a Spanish consulate abroad. You cannot apply for the NLV from within Spain unless you are already possessing another type of Spanish residency and you modify it into a non-lucrative residency. Otherwise, if it's an initial application, it must be done from a Spanish consulate. And it cannot be from any consulate. You need to be living legally within the jurisdiction that is served by that specific consulate, or you need to be a dual passport holder of another country. For example, imagine you're American and also Colombian. Well, potentially you could apply from the Spanish consulate in Bogota if you move to Colombia, yes, and you show that you are from that country, you could potentially also do it that way, yes. But for example, if you live in Atlanta, Georgia, the jurisdiction is Miami Consulate, who work with BLS, and you have to apply from Miami BLS. You cannot apply from Los Angeles or from Boston. You have to do it from the consulate that serves you, okay? And I already mentioned BLS. BLS is a third party. It is a big company from India, in fact. This company is in the Indian Stock Exchange. If you want to invest in them, they are huge. They are present in more than 60 countries, and they do the processing of visas for several countries, like Germany, etc. So for Spain, also, they do a lot of processing as well. They not necessarily do the processing of every single visa in every consulate. You need to understand whether your consulate that serves your area uses BLS. For example, in the UK, all the consulates use BLS. In the USA, not all the consulates use BLS. For example, New York City doesn't use BLS, okay? You apply directly at the New York City consulate in Manhattan, okay? And yes, so when I mentioned, okay, when you apply at this consulate, in fact, that you may be just having to deal with BLS International office in that specific city. And what is their purpose? It's basically to take your documentation, verify that everything in the requirements list you are submitting correctly. They put in a certain order, and then they give this file to the Spanish consulate. But BLS International doesn't take any decision. Yes, it's just a processor, an initial processor, just to make sure that everything is submitted correctly and nothing is missing, and also providing other services like logistical services, like taking your picture or sending you your passport back with a visa in it, etc., etc. Okay, so the first thing you need to understand is whether you live in an area of a specific consulate, so you know where to apply. And as I mentioned, you can go to Spainguru.es and find a dedicated page of your consulate in any of those 4 countries and read the official requirements and also read the first-hand experiences for those consulates, which is really, really useful. Okay, so you go to Spainguru guides, visa guides, non-lucrative visa consulates, and you find your consulate. I have here. I hear Irene's question. Hello, do you have contacts in Alicante or Calpe to book a face-to-face consultation with? I'll be there in May 2026. I'm applying for the NLV and I have lots of questions for my unique situation. So you just go to Spainguru.es. So everything is online, okay? You go to services, immigration, okay? And here you have immigration lawyers, yes? And here you have my recommended lawyers who all offer consultations. They're all online. You don't need to wait. But in the case of Sterna, they are also present in Valencia City, which is close to Alicante. So, but yeah, everything is done online. You don't need to have a face-to-face consultation, really. So you can have a Zoom call. You just get it and you talk about all your questions and you prepare that, okay? So yeah, let's continue. Well, one consideration, something that you need to have in mind, is the Schengen area. What is the Schengen area? It's a group of 29 European countries that is internally borderless, okay? And that has implications because you need to prove your entry into Spain in order to validate your visa, okay? And if you enter through another Schengen country, you might not get a stamp in your passport from Spanish authorities, so that's important to know, okay? Now, let's go through the visa requirements in Spain, right? This is the immigration status that you have once you enter Spain. You enter as a tourist or you enter with a residency, right? Now, the Schengen area has normally, for most countries, a 90 in 180-day rule. That means you can be in that Schengen area for maximum 90 days in a 180-day rolling period. Some nationalities require a Schengen visa, okay? Like, for example, Philippines. USA, Canada, Australia, UK doesn't require the Schengen visa. So you can enter with your passport for up to 90 days in a 180-day period, okay? Now, if you want to stay more than 90 days, you need to get a visa that can grant you a residency. In this case, visas that grant you a residency for up to 5 years are considered to be temporary visas. And visas or residencies that grant you the permit to stay in Spain for more than 5 years is called long-term residency, okay? So the non-lucrative visa, the visa itself versus the non-lucrative residency, the visa is the papers stick to your passport. It has a certain validity period that now is 1 year, okay, to enter Spain. And once you are in Spain, you need to get your residency via the TE card, the plastic residency card at the police station by putting your fingerprints, etc. And then you are holder of the non-lucrative residency, and the visa in your passport is no longer valid because now you are under a non-lucrative residency, okay? Very important. Citizens of European Union countries and associate countries like Switzerland, Liechtenstein, Norway, etc. Those countries are not EU countries. These people who hold passport of these nations don't need a non-lucrative visa, okay? They have the right to reside in Spain just because they hold this passport, okay? And if you're married or are the couple of a passport holder of any of these countries, there's also other ways to stay in Spain that are much better than a non-lucrative visa or non-lucrative residency, okay? You just go there. If you plan to retire, for example, or not work in Spain, you need to prove only 7,200 euros, roughly, depends by region, okay? You get a 5-year permit, so you don't have to renew it after 1 year or 2 years. You get a work permit as well if you want to work. So it is much better and much easier if you hold the passport or have the possibility to obtain it in the near future, okay? Which is the case of many people who can get an Irish passport, who can get a Spanish passport, etc., etc. And they're like debating whether they wait until they get these citizenships or not. In my opinion, if it's close in time, it's much better to have an European passport or be married to someone who has it, okay? And you can piggyback its resident permit. Otherwise, if you're a non-EU passport holder, the non-lucrative visa may be an option for you if you plan to not work in Spain. Let's talk about some tax considerations. Tax residency in Spain. What happens when you become a Spanish tax resident in Spain? Well, you are liable to pay taxes on your global income and potentially on the net value of your assets. Okay, and when do you become a Spanish tax resident? It is not a black and white question, but roughly when any of these three conditions apply. The first one, if you spend physically in Spain more than 183 days in a calendar year, starting from January 1st to December 31st. Okay, calendar year, very important because the tax year is a calendar year and the immigration year is a natural year that starts when you gain your residency in Spain. So if you enter on July 2nd, for example, your immigration year starts on July 2nd and goes to July 2nd the following year, 365 days after. So they may or not overlap with your tax year. Let's say overlap perfectly, okay? And also, every physical presence counts towards the condition of tax residency in Spain. So if you are in Spain as a tourist earlier in the year, all those days will count and need to be added. If later you get a visa and you enter Spain with a visa as a visa holder, you need to add all those days. Okay, so if you are over 183 days, you become a Spanish tax resident for sure. Second condition, if your main economic activity is sourced from Spain, okay, your main income source is from Spain. And third, if your family lives in Spain. I see a question here. Let me see. As a UK citizen, I can spend more than 90 days in total in 2 or 3 separate stays in the 180 days. As a UK citizen, no. You maximum is 90 days in a rolling period of 180 days, okay? Because UK is no longer in the European Union. So this is it. So people actually spend, they spend less than 90 days, get out of Schengen area, and when they get more days, they come back. And this is called the Schengen shuffle. More about taxes, okay? So a summary of the taxes. Some taxes that you need to have in mind. The first one is income tax. The annual income tax deadline is June 30th, and you would pay progressive tax rates that range from 19% to 47%. Okay, you have to be careful because certain types of income are not taxed the same way, or maybe avoided to be taxed in Spain due to double taxation agreements between the Spain and the US, UK, etc., like public pensions, government pensions, so much more. Then there is the foreign asset reporting called 720 form. Once you become a Spanish tax resident, you need to declare the existence of assets and rights held outside of Spain, like properties, bank accounts, cryptocurrencies, etc., Roth IRAs, stuff like that. If any of the categories is over 50,000 euros. For example, you have 2 bank accounts outside of Spain with 25,000 euros in each, you need to declare to Spanish tax authorities the existence of those 2 accounts and how much money they have. Then there is the regional wealth tax, okay, and the national solidarity tax, which is a tax with progressive tax rates that is based on the net value of your assets as of December 31st, the previous tax year. In Madrid and Andalusia, basically there is 100% rebate, okay? So you don't pay wealth tax, but you do pay the solidarity tax if your assets are over 3 million euros plus 700,000 euros of allowance, okay? And the wealth tax, it is a regional tax, so depending where you move in Spain, the threshold can be low or higher. In Barcelona, Catalonia, is only 500,000 euros plus allowances and deductions, okay? And in Valencia is 1 million euros net worth. Okay, as I said, in Andalusia and Madrid, it starts at 3.7 million euros of net worth because they have 100% rebate. So depending where you move, those taxes may or not kick in. Then it's important to remember that Your specific circumstances have a huge impact how much taxes you will be paying. So it's very, very important that you consult with a tax advisor, which I am not, okay? And you simulate your tax liability once you move to Spain or once you become a Spanish tax resident, because it can have a strong impact in your plans. And also, if you want to have better conversations with those professionals, highly recommend you joining my bi-weekly Spanish taxes webinar, and you receive, of course, a free recording. And of course, you have the chance to ask questions. Now, let's talk about non-lucrative visa documentation. We're going to go through a list, and then we're going to go in depth into the most important ones. They will ask you, address in Spain. Okay, where do you move in Spain? Are you going to move? You write Valencia, Spain. You write Seville, for example. In most consulates, it's like this. In some consulates, they have a strict interpretation of this rule. Okay, and they will ask you to provide a rental contract of at least 3 months. This is the case of Chicago, the case of Washington, D.C., the case of Houston, for example. I heard also Boston, okay? And some people choose to get an Airbnb in advance for 3 months. Then they mitigate it by reducing the initial booking to less than 3 months, okay? Potentially being a bit harmful for the landlord who accepted that booking. But yeah, basically, this is some strategies that people do in order to reduce the friction. But according to Ainhoa Manero of Externa Abogados, having this hard interpretation and asking for people for rentals in advance, it is absolutely not anywhere in the laws, and she doesn't do it for her customers. Okay, but yeah, it's important to know those nuances. Then, addressing country of residence, you need to prove that you are a legal resident within the jurisdiction of the consulate. For example, as we mentioned, if you live in Atlanta, Georgia, you are within the jurisdiction of the Miami consulate. You need to show your driving license saying, I am living here, okay, for example. Then, proving sufficient financial means to support yourself and dependents, okay, without working in Spain. We're going to talk about that. Have comprehensive health insurance for a company authorized to operate in Spain, or if you are a UK retiree, instead of a private health insurance, you could show instead the S1 form that grants you access to the Spanish public healthcare system once you are in Spain, okay? Then also show a clean criminal background check, a one-page document called the medical certificate signed by a doctor that shows that you're free of diseases that could have a serious public health repercussions. And if you're moving with your spouses, with children, then you need to show new copies, new original of the marriage certificates, apostille and so on translated, and or birth certificates as well, apostille, so on translated. Okay. Now, some consulates, most of them, will ask you to provide a letter of intent where you explain why you like to move to Spain and potentially promise that you will not engage in any work or professional activities in Spain, or sometimes even remotely, they ask you, right? That is called the letter of intent. And then there are some, let's say, very consulate-specific things. As I mentioned, some of them, they ask you for rental contracts, some of them for school enrollment for your kids. This is the case of Houston, for example. And then many of them, they will ask you to provide a photography, or they will sell you the photography service in the BLS office. You will have to pay the fees. Everyone has to pay fees. Every applicant, okay, every member of the family has to pay fees, fill forms, etc., etc. Okay. Now, if you want to watch some interesting videos, like go through the top frequently asked question, number 43, asked questions answered by an expert immigration lawyer, Ainhoa Manero from Externa Abogados. You can watch this video on Spainguru's YouTube channel. It is free. Each video is 20 minutes, and it goes through the most commonly asked questions that I have gathered over the years, and she answers them very, very specifically. Now, let's go deeper into each of these requirements. But I see a question here. Do you have any experience with the Kuwait Spanish consulate? No, unfortunately not. Do you know what type of proof of residence? I'm afraid I don't know it. Let's go through the financial requirements. Proof of sufficient funds. Of course, you need to show that you have enough money to sustain yourself without working in Spain. And the financial threshold for 2025, and this may change any given year, is 400% of the APREM index for the main applicant, and for each dependent, starting with the spouse, is 100% of the APREM index. Translated into euros is 28,800 euros for the main applicant and 7,200 euros for each of the dependents. So if you're moving as a couple, it's 36,000 euros minimum financial threshold. Now, how do you prove that you have enough money? You can have savings, you can have passive income, or a combination of both, okay? So you can show you are receiving a pension, you can show that you have rental income, but there is an asterisk there because many lawyers consider this to be an unsafe type of passive income, because some consulates and some renewal offices consider it to be also unsafe, so they don't like it. They suggest or they recommend that it's not the main base of your financial proof. Okay, then you can also show dividends, also funds available in your credit card, as long as you prove you get a certificate from the bank saying that they are readily available, liquid, without penalties, immediate accessible, etc., etc. Okay, how do you prove all this? Showing bank statements. Depending on the consulate or BLS office, they will ask you for 3 months. For example, LA is 3 months. Other consulates, they will ask you for 6 months, for 12 months. Okay, and also now documentation from your bank, certain certificates. Okay, wherever you have that money. Okay, and now they're asking for average balances in those accounts and much more information in order to understand whether you are the owner of that account, that your name matches with the name appearing in the account, etc., etc. Some consulates may also ask for tax returns. Okay, and remember that this financial threshold may mean that when you have to renew your residency, you may need to show double that amount, but in a period of 2 years. Okay, so if you're applying with savings, you have to show double the amount, because you need to show that you have enough savings to sustain yourself in 2 years. Okay, now this is region specific. Some regions, they ask you for double the amount. Some regions, they're asking only for 1 year. Okay, and also it will depend whether it is savings or if it is passive income as well, right? And here I have some screenshots from people saying this. In Valencia, you only need to show 1 year for the renewal. In Alicante, it's 2 years. In Almeria, they ask for 1. So it is regional specific. Now, we mentioned that these financial thresholds are based on an index. And as you can see over the years from 2004, these are the monthly requirements for the IPREM index. And now it's 600 euros per month, 7,200 euros per year, 100% of the IPREM, which is what every dependent needs to prove. Okay, and the IPREM index can be updated any given year if the national budget in Spain is updated. However, with this government, they don't have political agreement. They haven't updated the national budget in the last 3 years. It looks like in 2026 they will not update it either, which is a scandal, honestly. I have to say. And but if they updated it, they will take the opportunity to raise the IPREM index. That means that the new thresholds may raise. So if you apply in 2025 with this financial threshold, and then sometime later the IPREM index is updated and increased, as you can see, it only increases, you have to renew with a new financial threshold. Okay, so it will increase potentially. Okay, but in 2026, it seems that we're on the safe side, and it stays at 600 euros per month. Now, we mentioned that after May 20th, 2025, many consulates became stricter with the financial documentation, and now they're asking for certain certificates from the banks. What they want is to eliminate or to reduce the fraud. Okay, so a lot of people, for example, they crossed their names, the full names from the bank account certificates. They cross the number of the bank account. So for privacy reasons, for security reasons, they don't want that. They want to have visibility over everything. Okay, and they also want to know the account opening date, the closing date if applicable. They want to know also the average yearly balance as of December 31st of that account. Okay, just to see if there were any movements. Also, they want to see the monthly balances. okay, of that account, okay. And also a big question that I get asked is, for example, if I sold my house, okay, and I got, I don't know, €1,000,000 in my bank account, and I just got it last month, and then I applied for the non-lucrative visa, did I have to have account seasoning for several months before? They will see that I didn't have any money before. Would that be a problem? And according to Ainhoa Manero from Stern Abogado, she says, no. The law doesn't say that you have to have had the money for several months. The important thing is that you are over the threshold, okay? So if you sold your home, you don't have to wait for a year or more to apply for the non-lucrative visa, okay? And why the consulates ask this type of certificates? If I show you my own bank, I got this certificate saying that I am the owner of this bank account, that this is the number, okay, of my bank account. You can see my full name, my identification name, and you see a stamp, a wet ink stamp, like back in the day. And this is very common in Spanish banks, and that's why the consulate wants to see this, okay? But of course, in countries like USA, UK, Canada, etc., maybe this is not common, okay, to get a wet ink stamp, etc., etc. So you need to go to the groups, you need to read the first-hand experiences, you need to see what people are doing to meet these requirements. As far as I understand, the more you do to get closer to those requirements and you prove that your bank where you have the money doesn't provide that specific certificate in the way they want, but you do all you can, okay, to supply or submit this information, then you're going to be on the good side. You can also watch this video where I ask these very same questions to Ainhoa Manero. I will soon record another video with her about this. But yeah, she explains it on Spainguru's YouTube channel. You search for Spainguru financial requirements, and you can watch that video. Another question that we get very often is, can I work remotely for companies outside of Spain under the non-lucrative residency? So I am not an immigration lawyer, and I'm not recommending you to do it. Now there is a digital nomad visa, okay, for remote work, for people who work for companies outside of Spain, that is specific for this case. Now I'm going to tell you the reality, and I'm going to just paraphrase what Ainhoa Manero says and many other experts in non-lucrative visa. It is a gray area, but it's very important that in the consulate, when you're applying, there is no absolute doubt that you plan to work or that you are working or they see that you have any active income at all, okay? Because it's going to be a straight denial. Now, once you have the non-lucrative residency, there is a Supreme Court ruling in Spain that says that it is neither prohibited, neither accepted. Okay, so, and people do it. Many people do it. Under the non-lucrative residence, they have a remote work, and then they renew their visas with their savings, with other passive income. They don't show their active income. They became Spanish tax residents. They pay taxes on their global income, including all they make working, and there is no connection, there is no communication between immigration and the tax office, okay? And this is something that happens. So it is a gray area, and many people do it. And also, if you go further, some consulates, they openly accept that specific types of work are also okay and, let's say, eligible to obtain a non-lucrative visa. And this is the case, for example, of a community member that applied and got the NLV at Edinburgh, UK consulate, while working in an oil platform in the Northern Sea. So the main applicant, in fact, travels every month and works for a week or so, and then goes back to Spain and still got the NLV for himself and the family. And also I have interviewed lawyers who explain that, pilots who work maybe once every month or once every 2 months, they travel to USA, they work for 10 days being pilots, and then they go back to Spain, etc., etc. So it is a very specific situation, and if you're in this situation, definitely you are not a straightforward case. This is why people call it the retirement visa, because it's supposedly that you're not working anywhere, okay? And but if you are in this situation, potentially you can you could ask an expert to get your non-lucrative visa while keeping these specific types of jobs, okay? Again, this is no legal advice. This is not my recommendation, and I'm just exposing the situation. I have recorded several videos. You can watch this video here. Here you have the QR code where Ainhoa Manero explains it well. I have questions here. Can I use 12 months of sufficient funds that are in term deposits or as proof of income? As far as I understand, I'm not going to tell you yes or no to that question. I'm going to tell you that if the money is liquid and it is considered liquid by the consulate, then it's fine. How do you prove that that money is liquid? First of all, if it's cash in a bank, it's clearly liquid, okay? If it's a home that is unsold, it is illiquid. Anything in the middle, you need to prove that it is liquid, it is readily available without penalties immediately. Okay, so you need to prove that that money is readily available. Okay. Next question. Can you show as proof of savings using multiple bank accounts? As far as I understand, yes. Please remember, I'm not an immigration lawyer, okay? And this is not legal advice, any of the content on this webinar. I'm just repeating what other people are doing, okay? And I see every single day. I spend hours in the Non Lucrative Visa group, and I hear a lot. And of course, I write the first-hand experiences on Spainguru.es, and I read all of them. So this is what I hear. It's very, very important that you understand what happens in your specific consulate, because every consulate is its own kingdom. Now let's talk about private health insurance requirements, okay? Unless you are a UK retiree, or you can use the S1 form instead, okay? You have to get a private health insurance. And there are conditions to be compliant. Not every policy works. Very important, can't have co-payments, no waiting periods, and it has to give you full coverage, any type of medicines, and in all the Spanish territory, okay? Now, there are other things that are nuances, like reimbursements, for example, depending on the consulate or the official reviewing your case, maybe deny you if sees reimbursement clauses. Houston, for example, mentions no reimbursements. Now, full coverage is also another one that needs nuance, okay? And we're going to talk about that later on. In most cases, for all the recognized companies in Spain, Adeslas, DKV, Mafre, etc., you need to pay a full year in advance, because the companies require the full yearly payment in advance in order to issue a certificate of coverage. And that must be in Spanish, and it has to have a certain wording. Okay, it's a one-page document or 2 pages that says this person is covered, no co-payments, no waiting periods, etc. That's what the consulates want to see. This is very important. Let's go through the frequently asked questions. Are my medicines covered? It's not like the USA. Private health insurances here don't pay for your medicines. You have to pay retail price. Good news are that prices are much lower than in the US, for example, for medicines. What should be the health insurance start date? Again, very nuanced question, but generally has to start the first day of the month in which you plan to move to Spain, right? So you need to go to the appointment, guesstimate how long the processing time will be, and also in the form when you apply, you select the starting date of you want for the visa. So if you selected, for example, 15th of July, you need to start your health insurance policy on the 1st of July. That is what 80% of people say. Okay, some other people say, oh, it needs to be already started when you go to the appointment. Okay, but that could also bring potential problems in the future. So yes, are there health insurance for older than 75 years of age? It is true. Yesterday they were asking me, is there an age limit to apply for the NLV? And I said, no, as long as you are over 18. But if you're applying, the older you get, the more difficult it is to get private health insurance coverage, okay? That is not too expensive or is even compliant for this application. And if you are too young, you will face more scrutiny because you will be under working age and the consulates will think that you are trying to get the non-lucrative residence and work parallelly, okay? So these are the hurdles for the, let's say, if you are too young or too old, okay? Now, for health insurance, if you're older 70 years old, it becomes harder and harder. Now, there are companies that provide compliant health insurance policies, DKV, for example, or Adeslas, until 84 years of age, you can find, okay? And you can find them on Spainguru.es. What if I have pre-existing conditions? And this is circling back to the full coverage condition that has an asterisk. So it will depend how serious your pre-existing condition is. You may or not get coverage. For example, if you had cancer diagnosis in the previous 5 years, probably you won't get health coverage for a compliant policy. You'll have to wait 5 years, let's say, no, or the period remaining to past 5 years, just to give you an example, okay? Now, if you have something not serious, for example, like high blood pressure, this kind of stuff, many companies will exclude those pre-existing conditions from the coverage, but still will issue the certificate of coverage in Spanish with the right wording so you can get the non-lucrative visa, okay? But if you have any problem related to that pre-existing condition in Spain, you'll have to pay out of your pocket for the treatment and, of course, always for your medicines. Now, can I pay into the Spanish public healthcare system? The answer is yes. After 1 year of residency, you can use something called the Convenio Especial, which is a social security scheme, and you pay for your access, 60 euros per month if you're younger than 65, or 157 euros per month if you're older than 65. And then under the Convenio Especial, you are covered for any pre-existing conditions treatment, but you don't get subsidized medicines. You still have to pay retail price. Now, I see some question here. And before we move with that. If you think that the information that I'm sharing with you today is useful, please leave a review on Trustpilot. There's a button there on the top. We'll redirect you to Trustpilot. And if you leave a nice review, it will make my day, make me very happy. And I'm sure it's going to send you very, very good vibes with your Spanish Non Lucrative Visa application. I will be crossing my fingers for you. I have a question here. Does the S1 form need to be translated? I have an article about that on how to do it, okay? The how-to, okay? Spainguru S1 form. If I search here, how to pre-register before getting your TIE card. So here you have the registration process and everything. I don't remember about the translation. You can read this article I'm sharing with you, okay? As I said, search Spainguru S1 form and it comes up, and you can read it. And there's also a video. But right now, I don't remember about translations, okay? But check it out and see. Can I use my current health insurance from the UK, USA? Look, it has to be a company that is authorized to operate in Spain, okay? The short answer is, if it's NLV compliant, yes, you can use it. But the long answer is, I highly don't recommend it, because I've seen people who use their, let's say, foreign company policies that are great, that are incredible, but may have co-payment clauses, reimbursement clauses, waiting periods. The certificate of coverage is not in English, and you need to sworn translate it at a 40 euros per page cost, and it can have certain many pages, so it's very expensive, and may not have the right wording. So depending on the officer reviewing your case, you may face problems. So generally the policies from Spanish companies are very good. They are very affordable compared to your local ones in those countries, and I highly recommend using those because we know that they work and they're good. Okay, so definitely, yes, you can. If you need to use one, here you can go services, healthcare, Spanish health insurance for Spanish visas, and here, for example, I work with my exclusive agent, Adeslas, for Adeslas, which is the top company, Carlos Blanco. You just fill the form and you get a non-binding quote. Okay, shop around, see what works best for you. But I can tell you that Carlos Blanco is the best out there. He has several advantages. He is an immigration lawyer. He knows the ins and outs of this process, so he knows when you need to start it, and he can extend the start in the future, so for as long as you need. So that also leaves many headaches out and makes it much smoother, because many companies can only start the policy 1 month in the future, and he can start it 3 months in the future if you need, and even extend it if the date gets closer and you need to extend it. So definitely Worth checking it out. I've been recommending Carlos for more than 3 years, and only good reviews from him and good words. So yeah, definitely. Some of my NLV documents will be in Arabic. I assume I will need to translate to English before getting them sworn translated to Spanish. Some people do that to save money. Yes, when it comes in harder languages, translate to English and then sworn translate from English to Spanish, because it's cheaper and it's faster and it's easier to work. If you need sworn translators, I have here sworn translators, and the first service, Translate, it has any language pair, okay? Even sworn translations from Arabic to Spanish directly, okay? Worth checking if necessary. Or you can do the way you say. Some people say that that's better because it is cheaper, etc. Now let's talk about different health insurance companies. We have Adeslas, Asisa, DKV, ASA. All of them are very good, okay? I've been in Spain for 25 years, and I use 3 of them, okay? And including Adeslas, and I can only say good things about them. I mean, it's crazy that someone talks like that for insurance companies, but I can tell you that generally they're very, very good. If you look for reviews out there, you will find horror stories. But honestly, I didn't have any problem so far, and generally they are quite good. Like I hear much worse things out of the private companies in the USA, for example, rather than these ones. There's a lot of competition in Spain, and also competition between the private sector and the public sector. So that keeps the private sector prices low. So I think it generally works very, very well. And if size matters, Adeslas has almost 30% of the market in Spain, and 26% of Spaniards use private health insurance. So you have Adeslas, which is the first one. I would say that it is the best value for money. And then you have Sanitas, okay, with half the share, Asisa, DKV, etc. Now, let's go with the next one. Oh yeah, this is something that is happening in Washington, D.C. and also Manila, and maybe happening in other BLS websites, that they want to sell you a travel health insurance. That is not compliant, okay? This is very misleading, and it is actually a bad practice from BLS, who want to make more revenue by offering you some travel health insurance. But as you can see in the bottom left, even the consulate and even the same BLS page says that no travel health insurance will be accepted for the non-lucrative residents. Okay, so be careful with that. Only get the good compliant health insurance. As I mentioned Carlos Blanco before, expert immigration lawyers, start the extensions, and cost-effective option, great reviews. Definitely get a non-binding quote from him, okay, and a free initial call, okay, where you can ask any of your questions, and then you decide. You shop around, and I can tell you that that's a great option. Here you have wonderful reviews. You can read later when I send you a recording. Now, let's talk about the medical certificate. Okay, this has nothing to do with health insurance policy. This is a one-page document like the one you have there in front, that if you use a template provided by the consulate or BLS office, should come in English and Spanish. Okay, some of the templates are only in English. If it's only in English, always sworn translated to Spanish. If it comes in English and Spanish, as long as you fill up, the doctor fills up both languages, then you don't need to sworn translate it. Now, in the UK, you also need to apostille it. Okay, this is like a legalization, because the doctors in the UK can be registered at the Foreign Office, called FCDO registration. If they are not registered, then you can't apostille, and then the medical certificate is not valid. Okay, this is important, only for the UK. In other countries, you don't need to apostille the medical certificate. For example, USA, Canada, Australia, you don't need to apostille it. Okay, you need to print it with the doctor letterhead. It needs to come in officially looking with a wet ink stamp, is possible, signing by the doctor, not the front desk person. It has to be the doctor, and the stamp has to show a registration number, make it look official. Okay, and what is the content of the certificate? It says that you are not holder of infectious disease of the listed by the protocol of 2005, which is like yellow fever, etc., etc. Okay, so if you need health insurance certificates, medical certificates, I also have here two options for the UK: discount with ZoomDoc, which is fully online, and you also have the option to contact a Spanish doctor. Now, the Spanish doctor has a lot of advantages. First of all, it's all via Zoom, okay, or via WhatsApp call. He provides the certificate after a questionnaire, okay? And the good thing is that you don't need to translate it because it's in Spanish, and you don't need to apostille it because it's a Spanish doctor. Now, some consulates have had in the past, and some now, a strict interpretation that doesn't exist in any law or rule or anything that says that you have to be physically present in the territory of Spain when this certificate was issued, okay? This was the case of Manchester in the past, Lisbon. So if you're interested in this type of certificate that has certain advantages, when you fill the form, you fill out the consulate where you're applying from, and the doctor will tell you, yes, my certificate is accepted in this consulate, or no, this consulate in the past was not accepted. For example, Miami is accepting it. All the UK consulates are accepting it without you being physically present in Spain. Chicago, for example. Okay, so you ask the doctor who has all this information and who is doing like dozens of these certificates every month, and he can tell you. But definitely this is interesting that you know this possibility, because let's go to the first frequently asked question. My doctor won't sign the medical certificate template. What can I do? Or they want to do urine tests, blood tests, these kind of things. Or they want to add specific wording to the template, like to the best of my knowledge. Okay, all those are problems. Could be denials, etc., etc. So the best is that you change doctor, okay, and you get the signature for the existing template provided by your consulate. Okay. Second frequently asked question: in the UK, my doctor is not registered with FCDO, then his signature is not valid, right? It needs to be registered so you can apostille it, only for the UK. And how do I know the Spanish doctor certificate is accepted at my consulate? Just contact the doctor, fill the form. It is free to do it. Just ask, and the doctor will tell you, yes, my certificate is accepted at your consulate, or not. As I said, that is the summary. Here's a table that basically puts everything together into one cheat sheet about the medical certificate. Now, let's talk about the clean criminal background check. Usually this document that takes the longest to obtain, FBI background check, ACRO in the UK, must be clean during the previous 5 years, like nothing, zero, okay? It always needs to be apostilled, and it always needs to be sworn translated if it's not in Spanish, and usually has a validity period between 3 months to 6 months, depending on the consulate, and depending what states the certificate itself, okay? Now, let's go with the questions. Am I still eligible with records? Depends what type of records, if they're serious or not, if you serve conviction, if it's blood, if it's fraud, if it's recurrent. All this is analyzed in a case-by-case situation, okay? But if there are serious records, it's a straight denial. The ways to avoid this is that you either expunge them before applying for the visa, or you work with a Spanish lawyer who knows what they're doing, like the one recommended on Spainguru.es, who will prove that your type of crime or record should have been expunged by Spanish authorities if you committed that crime in Spain. Therefore, it shouldn't really count on the eyes of the Spanish consulate. But this requires some legal knowledge. So if you're in this situation, your case is not a straightforward case. So go with an expert and analyze it before even applying. Now, if you have something less serious, like a misdemeanor, smoking pot 20 years ago, driving under the influence 20 years ago without killing anyone, etc., small things, those are usually overlooked, okay? But be careful. Now, am I still eligible with a ACRO no live trace? Yes, you could be, but they will ask you a report that shows what it is, what type of record you have under the no live trace, just to verify what I just said. Can I expedite the background check federal apostille? Officially not, Officially not, since COVID. But you have services, private services, that have a 10-day turnaround. So we go to services here, immigration, and we have Apostille Services USA and UK. I have private services with expedite services here, okay? So 10-day turnaround for the US, and for the UK, it can be even faster. I have a question here. Do I have to have fingerprints included with my background check for the consulate? I don't understand your question. Sorry. Can you give me more context? Can I notarize the background check and use a state apostille instead? No, you shouldn't do it. Straight denial. You use a federal apostille for the FBI background check. Now, for example, if you're applying with your spouse and you married in California state, for example, it is a state apostille. Yes? Because the marriage certificate was provided by a state authority, whereas the FBI background check, the FBI is a federal authority. So you need a federal apostille. Okay? Can I notarize the background check and use? Okay. Where can I have my fingerprints taken? US. You go to a USPS post office, or you go to a approved channeler, right? That have, usually people report that they have better scanning machines, and you get your digital FBI during the same morning. And then you print that out and you put it in an envelope and you send it to Washington, D.C., official way that can take between 5 to 7 weeks, or you send it to a private service, okay? That, as I said, can do it in 10 days or so. Where can I have, what if my fingerprints are illegible? People report that, especially senior people. Their fingerprints tend to fade out in time. So I have articles on that, and I can share links if you're interested. Question. I have my background check, but it does not include fingerprints. Is this a requirement for an NLV application? As far as I understand, just the FBI background check, the certificate, is enough. And you need to sworn translate it, and you need to apostille it with a federal apostille. And recently, there was a denial in LA or San Francisco because there was no sworn translation for the apostille itself. So be careful with that. And this is what many lawyers recommend. Sworn translate also the apostilles too. Okay? But a lot of people tend not to do it just to save some money, and many times nothing happens. But recently, 15 days ago, I've seen a denial because of that. So be careful. Then, these are some screenshots of people talking about how long it takes. ACRO, premium service, 2 days, fast track. But if not, 2 to 6 weeks normally. In Canada, it's going pretty fast. Okay, and in the USA, as I said, 5 to 7 weeks if you pay $20, official way to do it, or private service, much faster at around 10 days. Now, people ask, do I have to quit before applying for this visa? Now, most consulates will love you to do that, okay? And in the UK, in fact, they're quite strict about receiving a P45 stating that you're no longer working, okay? And in the US, they want a resignation letter, termination letter from your employer, both translated and notarized. If you were a freelancer, a notarized affidavit promising not to work. In the UK, a letter from HMRC and accountant stating having ceased trading, and the register for self-employment. Now, many people ask, should I quit before I get the visa? And there's no law that says this, okay, no rule. But consulates, as I said, they always apply what they want and their views, and they're asking this from many people. But I know Manero from Stern, she says that it is actually illegal that they ask for this, and they put you in this situation before even knowing that they're going to grant you the visa. So many people want to work until the very last moment. But the truth is that depending on the consulates, they are stricter or less, but generally they're kind of strict. Okay, they want you not to be working at the time of submission of the papers. Now, read the requirements, read the first-hand experiences. But some people say that they promise to stop working at a certain date that is before the date that they want their visa to start becoming valid, okay, or issued. Now we're going to see some cases of denials and some cases that were successful. So it's up to you to take that risk. Is renting a property considered a job? Okay, so if you have 1 or 2 properties and you rent them long-term, it's not a job. It is passive income. But if you have 30 properties on Airbnb, you have a business, a big one actually, right? So people say that if you're on the second case, appoint a property manager, receive the proceeds, and make sure to show that you're not part of the operations. Okay, if you're somewhere in the middle and there's any doubt, it will depend on the official reviewing your case to determine whether it is active income or not. So if you think that you will create any doubt, then potentially get a property manager. Is investing in stocks considered active income? No. Can I volunteer while on an NLV? Yes, you can, as long as you don't get paid. And here are some screenshots that explain the situation in the different countries about people who didn't quit their jobs before applying. Okay, so they say in the UK, a P45 is one way, but so is a letter from your employer stating you have resigned and will leave on a certain date before the visa issuance. Someone else says, looks like it's a bit of a potluck if they accept a letter from HR department in place of a P45 is working until the last minute. That summarizes it all, okay? And generally the UK consulates, maybe they will ask you a P45 always before giving you the visa. Maybe during the 10-day period in which they ask for extra documentation, okay? That is the situation. In the US, they tend to be a little bit more open, but with more erratic situations. For example, this person in Houston said that he's going to retire in the future, but before or prior to the visa start request, and the applicant was told that they can only apply after officially retiring with updated documents. But in Washington, D.C., 1 month after, in July 2025, the D.C. consulate required resignation proof dated before the visa starts, so the same, but also a sworn statement of not working in Spain, okay, and also rental contract. So as you can see, the situation can be a bit different. And there is a case in 2023, end of this year, Venezuelan national in the Buenos Aires consulate that was denied of the non-lucrative visa because he showed activity on LinkedIn. So people say like, oh, consulates cannot Google you, they cannot see your social networks. It's not true. Actually, the consulate did it in this case, denied. This person went to court in Madrid, and the court of Madrid said that the consulate was right. So this is the case. What's going on in the consulates worldwide in general, and the consulates are quite strict about, creating any doubt about working. Next question: I have not worked for 8 years. Can I just include a letter affidavit promising I'm not employed and will not work in Spain? I'm not old enough for retirement income yet. I think those questions really, these are very specific. You should consult a lawyer for 40 minutes and ask. And I'm not saying that you don't ask me questions here, okay? But I want the best for you, okay, Irene? So I don't know exact answer on how to frame it exactly for your case. But if you haven't worked for 8 years, but it depends. You see, it just depends. Depends very much. And I think a lawyer that has experience with this process can give you the exact nuance, okay? And for how to prepare and the content of the documentation I need to prepare. Because I'm telling you, there's 2 ways here to see it. This is called a retirement visa. So if you're a pensionist who is receiving a pension and you are 65, you're a straightforward case. You don't need a lawyer. Zero. You just apply, you just provide your pension. It's clear that you have the money. It's easy. If you have criminal records, if you are under working age, if you're still working until the last moment, and many other things that fall into the gray areas of the application, then you don't have a straightforward case. If you don't have a straightforward case, for any of these reasons and many more that don't come to my head right now, at least consult 40 minutes with an expert immigration. Potentially hire the expert immigration to go along the way with you, with the application, who helps you prepare, who helps you meet the deadlines, understand the validity periods, set up a long-term strategy for your stay in Spain, potentially if you're going to go for a long-term residency, that you observe the minimum stay requirement, etc., etc. Yes, all that. So divide it. Are you a straightforward case or you're not? And take your decision. Very important. Please, by no means, this doesn't mean that please continue asking me things. It's very, very interesting. I just want to give you my candid thoughts about your case, because I see it. I see a little bit that you are not the exact straightforward case. That's it. No one. I love that you ask questions, really. Then let's talk about marriage and birth certificates and about non-married couples. So married couples, you need an updated, valid certificate that usually has a 6-month validity. It could be less, stated otherwise. If you're moving with children, you need also updated original birth certificates, always apostille and sworn translated if not in Spanish. Now, also non-married couples can apply, but they need to prove the relationship. The best if you have a legal partnership document. It's a strong case. But if you don't have it, you could apply as stable partners, showing that at least 1 year of cohabitation or child together. Okay, but it seems that they are quite strong asking about the cohabitation, even if you have children together. Okay, and what happens with adult children and ascendants? Unfortunately, after the new Reglamento Extranjería applied, they cannot be dependents any longer. By adult children, we're talking children over 18 years old, and they need to apply as main applicants or with other visas or like student visa, etc., other ways, okay, but not as part of the same family. And here you can read it. You can read the law, and it is underlined in red what is stating the law. And we mentioned a lot about sworn translators, but these are special translators, okay? This is not just, it's a professional translator. No, it has to be a professional translator that was accredited by the Spanish Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And no one else can appoint a sworn translator in Spain. Remember this. They need to pass a very difficult exam to become certified. Each of them has a unique registration number, which is public, and the translation of these special translators are accepted by all Spanish institutions, including the consulates, okay? Now, you don't need to send physical documents overseas to get to be translated. You scan them, and you send them by email. You ask the sworn translator, how much are you going to charge me if you deliver this within the next week, or urgent services, and they will quote you and tell you, and then you will receive the scanned document of the sworn translation with their stamp on, and that's what you print out and submit in your appointment, okay? So no physical mail is needed. Can I use any translator from the American Translator Association? I mentioned this because Los Angeles and Miami mentioned this association, but it's misleading. Only you can use Spanish Ministry of Foreign Affairs appointed sworn translators. The American Translator Association has nothing to do with this, okay? Except for the fact that they also translate. And that's it. It could be that a Spanish sworn translator is a member of this association. Yes, maybe. Why not? But I don't know why the ATA is mentioned there. The most important thing is has to be a sworn translator. Can a sworn translator work with several language pair? The answer is no. They only work between two languages, English, Spanish, Spanish, English is a language pair. If you need several language pairs, okay, for example, if you got married in France and you have a certificate in French or in Germany or whatever, Portuguese, etc., you have to go to agencies that normally deal with different language pairs. As I mentioned here, if we go to immigration sworn translators, this first company, they have all the language pairs that that exist, okay? And you can find sworn translations, all right, that are appointed by the Spanish Ministry of Foreign Affairs. So very useful. How much do sworn translations cost? For usual documents for this non-lucrative visa application, usually it's 40 euros per page, depending on complexity and how fast you want it. If you want it for tomorrow, well, they will charge you for that service. If you give them time, they will give you the best price, okay? The complexity, yes. If you want to translate all the bank statements and it's very complex, they will charge you more. So, but around 40 euros per page. What comes first, apostille and sworn translation? As I mentioned before, Some people got problems because of not translating the apostille itself. So the process, if you want to be on the safe side, no risk, is you obtain the official certificate, you send it for apostille, you get back the certificate and the apostille attached, and you sworn translate everything, including the apostille. This being on the safe side. Some people decide not to sworn translate the apostille, save some money, and sometimes it's very, very good. But sometimes you get a denial because of that, right? And you need to, they give you only 10 days to provide the sworn translation. So you need to spend double the money and put it and submit it. Then another big question is, should I sworn translate all the bank statements? As you can see there, this is a nuanced question with a nuanced answer. And about 80% of people, they just provide the bank statements in English without problems. Some of them choose, about 20%, sworn translate only the summary pages, okay? Some of them, 3%, sworn translate everything. And this is usually because they work with a lawyer that has an in-house sworn translator with no extra cost. This is what External Abogados does, for example. They sworn translate everything. So that's not a problem. They provide very, very strong cases that are like, let's say, undisputable. And there is another option that some banks provide the statements in English, in Spanish, okay? For example, I heard that Chase in the US provides it in Spanish too. So some people just print them out in Spanish, and that's they save that money and that step. So yes, this is not very important right now. Just before we continue, remember you can ask any question in the chat box in the bottom right corner of your screen. If you have to leave earlier and you think that the information that I provide is valuable, please leave a review on Trustpilot. It really, really helps. I am on 193 reviews. I want to get to 200. If you really, really help me, I'll be crossing my fingers for you and your NLV and waiting for you here in Spain with my open arms. And if you're watching this on YouTube, please give it a like and subscribe to the channel for more content like this. Now let's go to during the application. Some changes after May 20th, 2025 is that they increased the validity period of the visa to 1 year, okay? It used to be 90 days, so you had to enter within the first 90 days. And now they increased to 1 year because many people, they arrived to Spain with a 90 days visa validity. Then it took several weeks or months to get an appointment with the police to get the residency card. And they ended up without a residency card and with an expired visa. Now, with this 1 year validity, in 1 year you will get an appointment. So if you had to travel back and forth or get out of Spain, whatever, you get your visa that on the right, it says mult, number of entries, multi, okay? So it means that with that visa, you can go in and out of the country. And that's the reason why they increased the validity period. Now, there's people, this is very recent, so we haven't had many cases of people who enter Spain after the initial 90 days with the new validity of 1 year. And usually things in Spain are not very straightforward. There are a lot of human mistakes, and people tend to, time has to pass so that everything is standardized. So some lawyers recommend still enter Spain within the first 90 days, just to be on the safe side. But if you don't have the possibility or the option, or you don't want, then you can enter during the visa validity period post those 90 days. But potentially you will have some little problem, some maybe logistical problem at the police, etc., etc. Okay, I'm not saying that you will have it, but people recommend prudency with that. Okay, experts. Common mistakes to avoid. First, not checking the official requirements and not read them recurrently. Like every 15 days or every 30 days, read the requirements. People who are very organized report that things are changing constantly. And before their appointments at the consulate, new requirements appeared. Okay, so check them in English, in Spanish, and if they use BLS, also check the requirements in BLS. These are the most important BLS ones if they use BLS for processing the NLV. And by internal requirements also means reading first-hand experiences from people who are applying at that specific consulate, because several consulates, when you get to the office, they have papers stick to the wall with requirements that are not on the website, okay? And people report them in the first-hand experiences. So it's important that you stay updated. Common mistakes, wrong documents. For example, showing non-compliant health insurance. Yes, wrong chronology, starting with the easy stuff at the beginning and leaving the hard stuff at the end. Or creating the slightest doubt that you plan to work in the consulate. Yes, don't do that. Now, once you have the NLV, then another story starts. Now, let's talk about the timings, okay? The timings. Usually, you have to start 6 months before gathering documentation, okay? Getting the appointments, and then you need to leave some time for the processing. That can be from 1 week to more than 10 weeks, depending on the consulate. Manchester now is taking more than 10 weeks. And you need to understand that documents, the official documents expire, and they need to be valid at the time of the appointment, okay? And once you enter Spain, technically, you have 30 days to get your residency card, which no one does because of lack of appointments with the police station once you are in Spain. So that's important, okay? Now, this is a way to see it. First, you find your consulate. You learn if they use BLS for the NLV processing. Second, you check all the official requirements. Then, you start collecting your documents. You start by the difficult ones. Background check, police checks, okay? You apostille them. You get strong translations. Then you get your medical certificates that has a 3-month validity. You start getting your appointment to submit your documentation. Yes. Then, closer to the appointment, you get your private health insurance or S1 form as a UK pensionist. Okay. And you attend your appointment at the consulate. This is always if your consulate or BLS office has in-person appointments, because some of them don't have. For example, today someone reported that in Paris, there is no appointment. In Panama City, there is no appointment. They do everything by mail. Melbourne used to be only by mail. Now there is an appointment. Question, do my bank statements have to be calculated to euros from a different currency? That's a great question. I think people just provide the bank statements provided by their banks, okay? And then in the letter of intent, they explain all these finances and they show in dollars and in euros, okay? Because in the end, the financial threshold is in euros, no? 28.8K for main applicant, right? But the bank statements, they will be in the currency that they hold, as far as I understand. That's a great question. Then you attend the appointment, you submit the paperwork, you wait for the processing, you get your visa. Okay, sometimes you need to pick it up in person, sometimes you can pay and it's sent to you. And then with the visa, within the validity period, you enter Spain. Yes, and then you need to get your residency card. And for that, a lot of people recommend obtaining the empadronamiento. What is empadronamiento? It's the registration of your rental contract, if you're renting, or your property deeds, where you live, in the city hall of the city where you are living. And that empadronamiento, this one-page document, is a proof of address that the police station will ask you in 90% of cases in order to give you the residency card. Now, not all the rental contracts are valid for the empadronamiento. You need to ask your landlord if they let you get the empadronamiento. And second of all, the rental contract usually has to be older more than 6 months, okay? I have an article about that and a video that I recently published on Spainguru's YouTube channel. There's another way to see it with the timeframes. First, you start with the difficult stuff. Police check, marriage certificate, birth certificate. You get it, you apostille them, you strong translate them, you get the financial documents, medical certificates with a shorter validity period. You start getting the appointments several months before the appointment. You get the appointment, you get the health insurance, you start it usually in the future, in the same month in which you plan to enter Spain, and you ask the visa validity to start. You submit, you go to the appointment, you submit all the paperwork, waiting for the process, and then you travel to Spain within the visa validity. So yes. Now let's go back to taxes. A lot of people ask, I need to sell my home, but in my origin country, there is no capital gains tax. I heard that Spain can tax me on my capital gains. Yes, it is true. If you're a Spanish tax resident in the same calendar year in which you sold your home, Spain will want to charge you capital gains tax. Okay. Now, there are several ways to mitigate capital gains tax. If that happens, for example, if you sell your primary home where you have lived the previous 3 years and you use all the proceeds to buy a new primary home, etc., stuff like that, okay? There are several conditions, but the best way if you're selling your home before moving is to time your move so that you don't become a Spanish tax resident within the same year in which you sell your home. Easy example to understand. You sell your home on December 31st and you move to Spain on January 1st. Different tax years, right? Or, here's another way to see it. The case that I told you was the first case, and the second case is stay in Spain less than 183 days in the calendar year, so you don't become a Spanish tax resident during the same tax year in which you sell your home. For example, you sell your home in January, you get your visa in March, you travel to Spain only after July 2nd, so that you can only spend in Spain 182 days. Remember that counting trips also count, okay? Your physical presence in Spain counts. Now, let's talk about after the approval. We mentioned Schengen, right? 29 European countries, a group of countries that is internally borderless. So, depending how you travel to Spain, you need to prove that you enter Spain on a certain date. If you travel from outside of Schengen, you get a passport stamp or a screening. Now there is a new system that is being rolled out until April 2026 called EES, Entry-Exit System. May not have a stamp on your passport anymore. It is just a digital Big Brother style system. Or if you, for example, travel to another Schengen country, for example, Germany, France, Spain, and then you enter Spain coming from any of those countries, there is not going to be, usually, 95% of cases, an immigration control. And therefore, there's not going to be any proof of a date in which you entered Spain. In those cases, it is recommended that you go to the nearest police station and you sign a declaración de entrada, which is a one-page document like this. You go to the police station at the airport or the train station or near the border. Those police stations know what you're talking about. If you go to any police station in anywhere else in Spain, they look you like you are a Martian, right? But if you go to the one in the airport, etc., they know what you're talking about. You say, I need a declaración de entrada, or you print it out before, you fill it up, and you go there and you get a stamp, and now you have an official proof by the police station, by the national police, that proof that you enter Spain within a certain date. This is important. Second thing is, get a Spanish SIM card together with your origin country SIM card, because you need to get 2FAs messages to control your bank accounts in your origin country, etc. So get a phone that works with both SIM card from Spain and your origin number, because you will get SMS from Spanish authorities when you go to procedures with links that you need to click, etc., confirmations of appointments. You need a Spanish SIM card. Also, open a non-resident bank account. Until you get a TIE card, you are a non-resident technically for the banks, even if you enter Spain. And then when you get your TIE card, they will retroactively set the date of the start date of your TIE card to the day in which you enter Spain within your visa validity period. But for the banks, you are still non-resident. But still, you will need to pay your rent. You will need to pay your phone, etc., utilities, etc. So open a bank account. Also, if you can, before going to Spain, open a WISE account for currency conversion. we mentioned also obtaining an empadronamiento, proof of address for the TIE card, and officially 30 days after the entry in Spain, get your residency card or TIE card. The plastic card proves your immigration status, which will say visa no lucrativa or residencia no lucrativa no autoriza a trabajar. Frequently asked question, is the padrón strictly necessary to obtain the TIE? And there are no appointments to obtain the TIE. What should I do? And people are saying this. In Valencia, it's been 4 months and still no, I don't get an appointment with the police station. In Alicante, 5 months even. People are starting to get to freak out. But it's normal, okay? It's normal. Appointments can take up to 6 months without issue. Now you have a valid visa for 1 year, and it shouldn't be anything that worries you. The sooner the late, the better, but no immediate rush. Now, the big police stations know that the empadronamiento is not needed, so you just need to prove your address. The best proof of address is an empadronamiento, but sometimes a rental contract will work, okay, to prove where you're living and without an empadronamiento. And the big police stations know this. For example, I live in Malaga. There is a big police station, the Central Police Station, which is very good, let's say. People know what they're doing. But if you don't get the appointments there, you will go to smaller police stations, even outside the city in the same province, and they don't know that the empadronamiento is not officially required. So in 90% of cases, you want to have an empadronamiento to reduce friction in that process. Renewal process. You need to renew after 1 year of your visa validity, right? So you enter Spain. For example, you enter Spain on July 2nd, 2026. And in December, you go to the police station, they give you your TIE card, and the TIE card starts retroactively, starts on July 2nd, okay? Backwards. On July 2nd, 2027, yes, that is the expiration date of the TIE card. 60 days before the expiration date, you can already start renewing. Okay, you do it online via the Sistema Mercurio. It's a platform, official platform. You need a digital certificate for the signature to do it, or use a third-party lawyer, gestor, etc., who can do it for you. You can find on Spainguru.es. And it is recommended that you start doing the renewal 60 days before, because if any problem arises, you still have time to fix it, okay? Then the financial requirements, we mentioned that in some cases is double the amount, depending on the region and depending on the type of money that you have. Is it savings? Then sometimes it's going to be double the amount, because you need to prove that you can sustain yourself without working. For now, the renewal is for a period of 2 years. So you need to prove to the Spanish state that you have enough money to sustain yourself. If you don't have recurrent passive income, then you have to show that you have the money in the bank, right? And then you get another renewal for the years 4 and 5. So total, you will have 1 year residence, 2 years residence, plus 2 year residence, total 5. And then if you comply with the requirements for the long-term residence, you can apply for the long-term residence, which is much better than the non-lucrative residence. You can work, you can be outside of Spain longer time. You don't have to have proof of private health insurance, and many other things, okay? It's almost as becoming Spanish, almost. Now, in the previous Reglamento de Extranjería, they included a period of minimum stay requirements for the renewal of the visa of 183 days per immigration year, right? So natural year, not the tax year. And expert immigration lawyer Ainhoa Manero says that this is not enforceable because there's a Supreme Court ruling that says that this should have been included in the main organic law and not in the Reglamento de Extranjería. Proof of this is that in the previous Reglamento de Extranjería, the minimum stay requirement was deleted, okay? But still they made this again, and there is the Supreme Court ruling that brings us into this legal ambiguity. So technically, you can go to court if they decide to, if you stay less than 183 days in an immigration year, and they deny your renewal, you can go to court, and there is high chances, if not 100% chances, of winning that case. Excuse me. Now, remember that there are other minimum stay requirements for complying for the long-term residency and even applying for Spanish citizenship. That's another story, and you need to comply them if you want to obtain them. Let's talk about a case study for the renewal process. A couple, initial application, 36,000 euros. Imagine that the main applicant has an annual pension of 30,000 euros. That means that in 2 years, this person will have 60,000 euros. If it's recurrent income, it counts double. So they have 60,000 euros, and imagine they're in a region in which they ask double the amount, so they need to prove 72,000 euros in 2 years, but they already have 60,000 euros for a pension. They just show some 12,000 euros savings, and then they reach the financial threshold, right? This could be a way to see it. What about rental income? We said that it is sometimes considered an unsafe source of income, so try not to use it as the main source of income. Although many people say that they used 100% of rental income and they've been accepted in their initial application and they've been renewing. So it is a little bit also as a nuance about the rental income. So if you have the option, don't use it as the main source of income if you can. Yes, or ask for first-hand experiences about people who are doing it in the different areas of Spain. More requirements for the renewal: ongoing private medical insurance coverage, okay, or public healthcare system coverage, right? S1 form for the first year. Updated passport copies for both individuals. And remember, no health coverage gaps and no police records. Now will be in Spain, okay, no police records. And also for the renewal, they will ask you for empadronamiento in most cases as well. Minimum stay requirements, as we said, for the NLV, there is an ambiguity now, but they're asking for 183 days, but can be fought in court. For the long-term residence, you can only be outside of Spain no more than 10 months in the previous 5 years before applying for the long-term residency. So be careful with that. And for the citizenship, if you are passport holder of any of these countries in red, Ibero-American countries, Philippines, and a few more, you can benefit from a 2-year fast track of legal residency to be eligible for applying for the Spanish citizenship. Otherwise, normally, you would have to wait 10 years. US, UK passport holders or Canada holders is 10 years. So if you're applying via the 2-year fast track and you're holder of a temporary residency like the NLV, you can only be outside of Spain no more than 90 days per each of the previous years before applying. So that's important. Now let's talk about common pathways to transition to work permits. The most common ones. Number one, you receive an offer from a Spanish company that is called cuenta ajena, or you have your own business project. You need to get a business plan, get it approved, etc. So after 1 year of residency, you can go these pathways. Now, it's very, very important to understand that it's not, I'm not saying that after 1 year of an NLV, you automatically have a work permit. No, not at all. You can modify your non-lucrative residency to a work permit if you comply with the requirements of a work permit, but it is not easy, but it is absolutely possible. My wife did it, okay? That's what I'm saying. And the third one, a bit controversial, is potentially you can go from a non-lucrative residency into a digital nomad visa residency. And it's controversial because the digital nomad visa requires you to have been working remotely for the previous 3 months at least in order to apply for this residency. And of course, you shouldn't have been working supposedly, but these transitions are being accepted, okay? Now, the best way to apply for, or the safest way to apply for a modificación is first renew your non-lucrative residency, because if they don't give you the work permit, at least you have the 2 years renewal, okay, to stay legally in Spain, and maybe reapply, okay, with a better case for your modificación, right? Now, you can use Spainguru for free, as we said. You can join my weekly newsletter. You can opt out anytime and subscribe. You can watch the YouTube channel, more than 1,000 videos. Now it's 7,600 subscribers. And you can read articles, more than 2,000 articles, huge community on Facebook group with Spanish Non Lucrative Visa, at around 26,000 members that you can join today. It is free. You have the Move to Spain checklist that I highly recommend you checking. And of course, you can join my other free webinars. And you can, well, of course, check my services that I have personally vetted over the years. You're in very good hands. You can read the reviews out there. They're all very good reviews, not only from Spainguru, but also from my partners. So I take that extremely, extremely seriously. And also, you can always send me an email to hello@spainguru.yes, and I do my best to answer you, to point you in the right direction, giving you resources, videos, articles, services, you name it. I always answer my emails. And yes, we can stay in touch. Remember that the content of this webinar is for information purposes only and is not legal advice. And the requirements listed here are not official. Please check your consulate's requirements in English and Spanish, your BLS office requirements, and also the non-written requirements that people who share their experiences put on the Facebook groups. Now, we answered all the questions. Thank you so much, especially Irene, who is applying from Kuwait, that she asked a lot of questions and made this, rather than a presentation, made it a conversation. It was fantastic. I really, really appreciate it. Thank you so much for staying until the end. And I'm recording this. I'm going to be uploading this to YouTube. But right now, I have to go to a town close to Malaga to interview a couple who retired in Spain from the US West Coast. They're in their 60s. And I'm going to go to do an interview from them. Actually, yesterday at night, I uploaded an interview from one lady, 54 years old, who moved from LA to Estepona in Malaga. You can watch it right now on Spainguru's YouTube channel. So I'm adding more and more first-hand experiences and real interviews from real people who are moving to Spain, so that you can get, the feeling. Also, not only talking about paperwork, taxes, and all the ugly stuff, but also I want to showcase why people are going through this, because it is a fantastic place to live. It's a fantastic place to retire. Spain, I really love it. I'm originally from Argentina. I became Spanish thanks to Ainhoa Manero, who did my nationality process. And I have my family here. I'm married to an American lady, and I have two wonderful daughters here who dance flamenco in the school. So I'm really, really in love with this country. And of course, I talk about all the ugly stuff and all the bureaucratic stuff, but please don't forget that we do this for the better good, which is moving to a wonderful place. So yes, as you can see, I can't stop talking. I will upload this soon to YouTube when I get the time, probably during the weekend, probably Saturday, and I will share the recording with you, and I will send you an email with the link. Thank you so much again for being here. Have a wonderful week. Leave a review if you can. I'll see you around. Take care. Goodbye.